Okay, so let's get started. So the eighth problem is a pretty straightforward problem. You are given like that a string is called a square if it is some string taken twice. So ABC, these are all squares while these are not. So one clear observation which you can have for this problem is if a string is square, its length should be even, and if it's odd, then you directly know that it's not a square, so you can print no. And if it's even, what you would just do is like take a half of it, say it's m, and now you can compare all the characters. You can use string functions like substr and all to make your code look a bit small, but the core idea is you just compare the first character with like you compare the ith character with I plus m character for all I less than m. So I will just show you the code. Okay. So the this is like you take up the string, you find its length. If it's odd, you know that it's not gonna be a square, so you print out no and you return. Else you find the half of it is m, and for all the characters less than m, you check if they are equal to it, like equal to I plus m. If they are not equal, you print no and you return. And if all the characters are same, then only f would be printed. So that's the simple solution for A. If there are any queries or any suggestions, we can maybe take that after some time so that like we can start up in a bit quickly. So this is the solution for A. Let me go to the solution for B. So for B, like what you are given is like you would be given an integer n, and you need to find how many numbers between 1 and n are either square of some number or cube of some number. They can be both as well. So, like you can probably one thing you can do is iterate over all the numbers from 1 to n and check if it's a perfect square or a perfect cube, which you can do that by finding the square root and taking the square to see if it's the same thing. So that way you can do it, but it would be O of n, and since n is 10 power 9 and there are 20 test cases, it would exceed the time limit. So what you instead do is you iterate on the numbers that can be like whose square and cube would be like that particular number which we want. So like suppose for this thing we have 1 2, again cube root is 2 and square root is 3. So we will just share my code. This is something which you can understand a bit better with code. So you initialize your answer with 0. You iterate the for loop from 1 to ever. Like 1 means it's always gonna be true and the loop will continue. It's more or like while 1. So if the square of the number is greater than n, you break, because you know that for n number after this, the square and cube would be greater than n and you won't get an answer. Else, you find out the square of the number and the cube of that number. If the square or like if x is less than n and the number was never taken, you increment the answer by 1 and you then mark that x is taken. So basically map, if you don't know, it's like you can consider it to be a really big array, like an array which you don't have a size limit. So we initialize a map and now we use it to maintain like whether the number is taken or not. So map of x, like once we include it in our answer, we mark the status of x to be 1, that x is taken now. And similarly for y, if y is less than n and y is not taken so far, you increment your answer. And irrespective of that, you mark the status of y 1 again. I guess this one is redentless. But yeah, so you mark the status of y as 1 because it is taken. And in the end, you just print out the answer, which is like the answer for like the numbers so far which have been which between 1 and n who are which are either square or cube of some number. So that's the solution for one. Does anyone have any queries for A or B problem? You can maybe write in chat or raise your hand. I guess some people had some queries in A and B solution. Yeah. Okay, Narsima, you can unmute yourself.
Like, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Like, what I actually did was like I took this cube root of n, I took the square root of n, I added, I took the floor of it, both of them. Then I added those two and I subtracted the cases of that sixth root, 1 by 6th root of it. and I thought I will get the answer, but I was not getting the answer.
Okay. So basically, okay, one general thing is like for A and B problems, you would generally have like lower like range of the numbers. So try to do a brute force solution over some solution which requires some part of thinking. Because not only you can implement the brute force solution pretty quickly, but also like there are less chances of it getting wrong. So that's a general thing. It's not for this problem. Okay, let me think why that thing would not work.
No, actually, it was working for uh, almost. Yeah, I used power function only. It was working for all cases except when I put, I think, n as 9999 times. For that case, when I take the one third power, that is 999 power 1 by 3,
Hmm.
it's and if I do that power function and if I floor the value, it is showing as 1000 instead of less than 1000.
So basically, this power functions and all like they have implementation using double. So that's where these like kind of may like give you wrong answers. So probably for these kind of simple things, you can try to use like your own functions. So I guess someone has mentioned don't use power, use this less than yeah. So basically, like you can construct it yourself. So
Can I just say something?
yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I did the same approach with Narasimha. What you did was like just square root of n plus cube root of n minus the sixth root of n, right?
Yeah, yeah, same.
I did exactly the same thing, but I used like floor of square root of like I used the square root function and the cube root function, and for sixth root I like used square root of cube root of n, and everywhere I just use floor like floor of square root of n plus floor of cube root of n minus floor of square root of floor of cube root of n, and that worked. Mine got accepted.
Oh, okay.
So
I,
basically,
I,
just with the implement
Hi,
like the working of the functions.
hi.
you used power, right?
I didn't use power. There's an inbuilt square root and cube root function like in C++. I
Okay,
just used
okay,
those.
fine.
And for sixth root, I just used like
Yes,
both
square
of them.
root and cube root both. Yeah.
But make sure everywhere you just use floor so that it takes like integer, or else there could be some errors or something,
Hmm.
I guess.
Like yeah, I
Yeah,
can
like
used to hesitate to use them in general because like sometimes I face
Yeah,
errors
yeah.
and all and all. So in big codes, like you would have done it correctly, and just that one thing would have made it all wrong. So I just I like tried not to use them. Okay. Is
Uh,
anyone else? Yeah.
Hi, Vineet. Hi. Hi.
Yeah. Right.
So, like the mistake in his code is that he does pow some number raised to the power 1 by 6 in the form of doubles, but 1 by 6 gives you a value of 1.66668 after rounding up. So basically, if you have a perfect sixth power of some number, then your answer will be slightly smaller than, suppose you have 64, your answer will not be 2, it will be slightly smaller than 2 because of this rounding up of
Hmm.
uh, the one like 1 by 6. So hence, when you floor it, you will lose one complete number, so you'll get the answer less
no,
by
no.
one.
It will be slightly greater, right? 1.668, right? So it should be greater.
Yeah, 0.1668. So I guess it might be slightly yeah,
It
big.
should go greater.
Hmm.
Okay, that explains why I got 1000, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah,
So in general, like try to avoid them until like it's necessary. So yeah,
okay.
that's it for the A and B problem. Does anyone else have any other queries?
Do I need any header file for square and cube, or is the standard library
Yeah, this
that?
STL library mostly contains everything you would ever need. So yeah, that should work.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So okay, so let's go ahead. So that's the solution for A and B problem. I guess it was simple, but still, if someone has the query, you can do it. You can see my code. I will share it up later on the group, so that if you miss out some syntax or something, you can try to understand it from there. If you don't know some part, something like string or map, like you are a bit new to it, you can just message out to me. I will share you some links where you can learn it from. But I guess A and B problem is something which almost everyone should have done it and get accepted because like they were on the simpler side. And for A and B problem, mostly brute force would work. So again, like something like the square root and cube root was pretty simple. But if they are allowing you to do the brute force, you can do that as well. Okay. So let's go ahead. Next, the C problem. It was a bit trickier for a Div 3 C. it was a bit on the implementation side. So you are given, like, I hope all of you would have read the problem, but still I would just give the brief description. You are given two numbers, like you are given that Tanya has a different way of adding two numbers. So if she has two numbers A and B, she would first make them up to equal digits, and then for adding them, she don't do the normal carry forward thing. She would just put them as it is in the summation. So 6 plus 5 11, then 6 plus 3 9, 4 plus 2 6, 7 plus 3 10, and then 1 plus 0 1. So this is what like how she adds to number. And now what you're given is there was some number A and B. You added them and you got S. Now you're given A and S and you need to find B. So one straightforward thing you can do is you start from the right for S and A. Now you see if S is greater than A, because if S is greater than A, then then what you can do is okay. Let me just use the whiteboard. So let's take this example. Suppose we have 11069. Okay, so 1106911. This is like the summation, and let's take one number to be 3465. So 3465. Now what you can do is you start from the right end. You see if S, like the current number in S, is greater than that of A. So this is our A, this is S, and we need to find B. So you start from the right end. If this is greater than A, you can, like, you know that B's that character would be S minus A. But since here it's not, we know that it would have been a case when the summation of A and B was 2-digit, and you would have kept 2-digit in S. It has to be that there is no option. So you take two characters. Sometimes, like, you can see that here it would be 11, and 11 minus 5 is 6. So the first character of B is 6. Then we go to the next position for both of them, 9 and 6. So 9 minus 6, here it will be 3. Note that here you can't take two numbers, because since this number itself was greater than this, their summation would be, like, if you take this as well, it would probably go greater than 10. So you can't, like, B's each character should be a single digit. Only in S you can have that there was a 2-digit thing. But for A and B, every single character on the same position is added. So for this this character of A, there would be a single character corresponding to B. So here for 9 and 6, you would put 3. For 6 and 4, you would again put 2. For 10, like 0 and 3, you know you can't do this. So you would take the next character. 10 and 3, you put 7. And now for the remaining characters of S, we know that there is nothing for A. So probably it would have been 0. And now you, like, subtract 0 from that, so you would get the same number. So 17236, which was our A. So I'll just show you the code. So what's the code for it? Like, I have a bit of a weird implementation. Probably there could be better implementations as well. You can check on that, but like the logic of the problem is what matters. So you take the strings A and S. You can take up in numbers as well, because it's just 10 raised to 18. But like, I thought it would be a bit more easier with strings. So you take the numbers as string A and S, which are the input numbers. Now what you do is you reverse them, because you need to start from the right end, and we find out their size. If n is greater than m, you put -1, because A has to be less than S. Apparently they have mentioned in the problem itself that it won't never happen, but I just tried to do it up in general. So if the size of A is greater than the size of S, then you know that no such B is possible. In the problem, if the no such B is possible, we have to print -1. So yeah, so if n is greater than m, you print -1 and return. I guess I will just like explain like you that the template I follow is since we have test cases, we take in test cases, and for each test case, I'm running this solve function. So whenever I think I have printed the complete answer, I would just put return, and it would go on to the next test case. So this helps in general. So yeah, for n greater than m, the answer is -1, and I return. So it just goes to the next number, next test case. If that is not there, I define the string B. Now, like J is the pointer to the S string. So this is like J, and I simply goes from 0 to M. So this is like the pointer to A, and this is the J is the pointer to S. So each of them would have a separate pointer because j can be larger than I as well. Yeah. So if j is greater than m, which means j has already crossed the string, like the length of string s, then you print -1 and return, because you know that there is no character in s, but there are still characters in a. So this is not possible. So the answer is not possible. If you still have j, then what you do is you take up that character, which would be s of j minus 0. So like this is the character value, which would be 6 plus the value of 0. So you subtract 0, so you get the numerical value of that character. So x is like probably 6 for this turn, and similarly you define for y, like y is the particular number in a. If x is greater than y, then like suppose in this case 6 is greater than 4, then you push back x minus y. I've defined a function which just converts the number to the character. So yeah, so if x is greater than y, you just push back x minus y into the string b, and you continue. If so, like that's the case when x is greater than y, and you can simply put it up. If that is not the case, and you have exhausted the string s, then you print -1, because you know that now nothing can be done, and we still need a character in s, but there is no character in s. If again it has not exhausted, what you do is you add to x 10 times the next character. So suppose for the first case, we checked 1, but 1 was less than 5. So we added twice of the next character, which made it 11. Now what you do is you see their difference w, which is like x minus 5, which would be 11 minus 5, 6 here. If this w is greater than 9, then again we know that nothing in b can exist. So like, cause like b, each character should be between 0 and 9. So that way we are gone. If after that as well w was less than 0, which means like something like say 0, 1 and 5, then this thing is still less than a's current position, and we know that nothing can be done. So we are again gone. And suppose it was 1 and like 21. So 21 minus 5 is 16, which is again greater than 9. So nothing can be done. So in both these cases, answer would be -1 and we exit. Else, if it is between 0 and 9, we push it into a string. In the end, if there are remaining characters in S, we again push them into B, we reverse the string, and we print it. For the printing thing, you just need to ensure that you don't print leading zeros. So for that thing, I just ran a simple for loop. Done is to ensure that I have seen at least one non-zero number. So if there are any zeros in the initial of the string B, you just don't print them. Apart from that, you print all the characters of B. And yeah, and like if there is, if you didn't find any non-zero number, then you print -1. This is again not required because S is greater than. Like my implementation might be a bit long for this particular problem, but the core idea is this: you start from the right, and whenever you can take up the like difference, you just do it up. Else you just take up one more character from the left and see if it works out and do it. So that's the like a simple greedy technique. There is not much of a thinking and all required for this problem. You just do as it is stated for the problem. So are there any queries for this particular problem?
I have a doubt.
Sure, go ahead.
What was that B pushback, that thing in your code?
Okay, so pushback just pushes the correct character into the string. So are you familiar with vectors? So just the same way in vector, you push back a character or something, it does that.
Pushback a character means like insert it, huh?
Yeah, insert it on the last.
Okay.
So suppose you have a container and you're putting something on top of it every time. So that is what push back.
Okay. Thank you.
And reverse string and all is something which would reverse the string.
That end.
Yeah, okay. So like there would be small things in my code which you might not get. So you can probably just put it in the chat as well. Maybe someone would answer, or you can just mention it on group or DM it to me so that like I can provide you relevant references. If it's a small thing, you can speak up and ask in the like here itself. Yeah. Are there any other queries in terms of the logic of C problem or the code? Okay. Yeah, cool. So let's go ahead. Maybe if you have some better approach, you can just write it in chat and discuss among yourselves as well. That thing is also like a nice thing to do among yourselves. So this is the solution for C problem. Again, it was not difficult in terms of thinking, but there was a bit of implementation. So probably with time you would get how to implement it, and maybe all of you can do it over time. But yeah, like C problem is something which you should be able to do if you have done like some practice and all in competitive programming, because it was nothing in like it requires a lot of logical thinking and all. You just need to implement it straightforward. So I hope the idea of the C problem is clear. Okay, so let's go on to D. So for D, what you are given is like there are n friends and m shops. So in the city there are m shops and you have n friends. Oh, Vlad has n friends, and we will just draw it. Okay, so let's take some example. Let's take this one. So yeah, so Vlad has 4 shops in his city and 3 friends. And what A of ij is? A of ij is the happiness, right? Yeah, the unit of joy. So like basically the happiness the jth friend would receive, would get if you buy a toy from the ith shop. So let's take this test case. So 1 3 1 3 1 1 and 1 1 3. Okay, so this is the matrix that we have. What we have mentioned is these are the shops number 1 2 3 4, and these are the friends number 1 2 3 4. And now like say we can mention shop 1, shop 2, shop 3, and shop 4, and this is your friend 1, friend 2, and friend 3. Now what you're given is you can buy you can select some n minus 1 shops. So again, n is the number of friends and m is the number of shops. So you can buy you can select any n minus 1 shops initially. Like suppose here n is 3 and n minus 1 would be 2. So you select any 2 shops. Probably say you select these 2 shops. Now what you can do is you can buy a gift from each of the shop, and you can give them to your friends. And if you buy this particular, like if you buy a gift from this shop 1 for your friend 1, he would get a happiness of 1. And if you buy a gift for your friend 2 from shop 1, he would get a happiness of 3. And if you buy a gift from shop 1 for your friend 3, you would get happiness of 1. What you want to do is like you would select the n minus 1 shops, give gifts to your friends, and then you would calculate the minimum happiness any of your friend is getting. So suppose if you selected just one star like S1, then each of your friend would get 1, 3, and 1 happiness respectively, and the minimum of them is 1. So your alpha is 1, and the task for this problem is to maximize this value. So maximize the minimum joy of the friends. This is something you might want to do in real life as well. So suppose we take S1 and S2, it is pretty clear that okay, let's take a different example for now. Suppose instead of n minus 1, you could select n shops. Then the problem is pretty easy, because what you would do is for each friend you just select the shop that gives him the most happiness. So for each person, like for each of your friend, you can't give them happiness more than what you have available. So among all the shops, you would select the shop which gives him the most happiness. For this friend, which is like 3. For this one, it is 3. And for this one as well, it's 3. So suppose you were allowed to take n shops. What you would do is you would just choose the shop for each of the friends which gives them the best happiness, and then you would take minimum of all of them, and that is your optimal alpha, which is a pretty greedy technique, and you don't have to think any. I hope that part is clear. So like if you can select n shops, you would just select the best shop for each friend, and that would give you the optimal answer overall. But here we can't select n shop, we have to select n minus 1. So naturally what you might think is for n shops we just try to get the best of every win. So probably for n minus 1, I would just try to see if I can remove one shop and get some answer. Okay, one thing which is clear is if you select n minus 1 shops, then your answer would be the best of a friend in each shop, and then you take the minimum of all of them. So that like that's the thing. So like if you select say S1 and S2, then you would take like this gift for a friend 1, this gift for friend 2, and any of this for friend 3. So if you have selected n minus 1 shops, you would just take the gift from the shop for a friend, like for a particular friend. You would just see which shop among all of these gives the maximum happiness, and you would take it up, and then you would take minimum of all of it. But I guess if we do the brute force implementation of it, it would go to O of n square into m, which might exceed the time limit. But yeah, so again, here what the task is, you have to select n minus 1. And naturally, what you might think is for n I can do, maybe I will try to eliminate one shop and do and all that. But it's like, I think it's like kind of a trap. I'm not sure if some solution exists like that way. But this is something I went in initial approach, maybe trying to eliminate one shop and try to see. But like I guess it wasn't working out for just this test case itself. So basically, one thing like which was a bit hidden in this problem is you do what is called binary search. So in general, for binary search problem, it's pretty straightforward. Like if you would have practiced some binary search problem, you can easily see every time when it's binary search. Just give me a second. Yeah, for in general binary search problem, you can always see it directly that okay, it's a binary search problem and you would do something on the binary search. But for this problem, I thought like binary search wasn't that obvious like in other problems. So what you can see is suppose so you define a function check which checks if is it possible to select see for suppose we define check of L. Then what check of L does? Check of L does, is it possible to select some n minus 1 shops? Is it possible to select n minus 1 shops such that all the friends get greater than L happiness? So the idea is it possible to select n minus 1 shops such that all the n friends get greater than L happiness? I hope greater than equal to L happiness. So suppose like you do check for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Suppose you do check for this thing here. So let's try to see it up. So suppose we do check of 1. So is it possible to select 2 shops such that all the friends get greater than equal to 1 happiness? We can see that we can select S1 and S2 and all the friends will get like there is some way to select a gift from each shop such that everyone would get greater than 1 happiness. So that is true here. Let's see check of 2. Is it possible to select such that everyone would get greater than equal to 2 happiness? For friend 1, you can see that you must select this shop. There is no other option. So this shop is selected. For friend 2, you can see that you must either select this shop or this shop. So that is not determined. And for third friend, you can see that you must either select this shop or this shop. So now you can see that you can just select S2 and S3 and everyone would have greater than equal to 2 happiness. So this is, you can say true. This is also true. But now you can see for 3, 4 and 5, you would not be able to find 2 shops that gives the everyone greater than equal to 3 happiness. So for 3, 4, 5, it's false. And if you know binary search, you can clearly see that it's the clear example of it. True, 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 false, false. So basically, if it's possible to get happiness, like get alpha greater than equal to L, then it is also possible to get greater than equal to L minus 1. So that's where the binary search thing comes. So you just want to find the maximum value for which check of L is true. So like maybe just go to the code. Okay, so let's see the binary search thing first. So you just like I have defined a global array vector gift so as to store the matrix. Now for each n, okay. So okay, I think it should be okay. No, so gif of I is the gift. Like so, basically, I have defined a 2D array gift, which is like gift of I comma j is for the ith person, the jth shop has this much happiness. So I cleared all the vectors from 1 to n. I guess let's not go into the implementation that much, but yeah. Now for all shops from 1 to m, you take the input. 1 to n, and then you take up x, and now gift of j, basically for jth person, it would give x happiness from the ith shop. So you just push it back. So that is like storing up the input. Now for the binary search, you define L to be 0, because you know that you can always give greater than equal to 0 happiness, because all the values are between 1 and 10 power 9. So you can like do that. So L is basically a value which would always be true, and R is a value which you know that for sure would never be true. So R equal to 1 in 9 plus 1, you know that that won't be true, because all the values are maximum 10 power 9. So you define L and R that way, and then you simply do the binary search. If you're not very familiar with binary search, you would share up the resources with you later on, which using which you can learn binary search. So that's the idea of binary search. You would define them, and you keep on checking. So you define, like, you find mid. If mid is true, then you mark L as mid. If you change L to mid, else you change R to mid, and then in the end, L would be the largest value which is possible. So you print out L. So that is the binary search you would do. On what the check function would be is the most important thing. So suppose we are given. So as we did, suppose we were given the value as 2, what we would do is, for each friend, we will see which all shops does actually, like, which all shops would be fine. So for friend 1, we know that only shop 2 is fine. So you must take shop 2. For friend 2, there were two options, shop 2, shop 3 and shop 1. For friend 3, shop 3 and shop 4. So for each friend, you see what all are the possible options for that particular friend, such that we can get him to be more than happy than 2. If none of the shops satisfy him, then answer is clearly no. If there are some shops that satisfy, you just mark them up. And now, to get the answer in n minus 1 shops, what must be true is that for some 2 person, the same shop would do. So if for any 2 person the same shop would be fine, then for all the remaining friends you can just give them their best shop or something. So basically, we have to check that, are there any 2 friends who will get, like, greater than equal to L happiness with the same shop number, and that is what we have implemented. So we define map to mark that is this shop possible for some friend previously. Pos is just like a boolean, like if the answer is possible. So in the end, if pos is 1, you return true, else you return false. Now you go over each of the n friends and you check up all the shops. So GIF ij would give you the happiness that gift from jth shop would give to the ith person. So that is x. So if x is less than L, then you can't take the gift from that shop for that particular person, else he would get less than L happiness. So you can't take that. If you can take the gift, if that shop is already taken by some other friend, like if that shop would also do to some friend previously, you mark pos as 1. That is, your answer is possible now. And irrespective of that, you mark that shop again, because like this person can also like get happiness greater than L if you take the gift from this shop. So you mark it up 1 again. So for each person, you mark up the shops which would give them greater than L happiness, and then maybe you can do it without map using an array as well. Map was not necessary here. Yeah. And so for each shop you do this, and if for any shop there are more than 1 person who would get satisfied with them, like with just taking this shop, then you know that your answer is possible and you return true, else you return false. And this way you can implement the check function, and thus you can find out the maximum L using which you can get all the get all the person happy, get all your friends happy with just choosing n minus 1 shops. So I guess that was a bit long explanation, but I hope it's clear. Do you guys have any queries in any of the part? Like, I guess it was a bit quick, so like you might have some queries, so feel free to ask. Okay, like if you have in some part of the code, maybe binary search or maybe the map thing, you can ask. I guess if you get the idea that it is binary, it has to use binary search. The implementation is like not very difficult. Like the thinking part is not very difficult. If the implementation can be depending on like how much familiar you are with codings and all that. But yeah, I guess like the key idea here was to see that using binary search, you can do this problem. So if you can find out the checkl function, the binary search implementation is not difficult, obviously. But I guess yeah, like a lot, like pretty less number of people had done this problem, and I guess it was because that binary search was pretty uh, unlike unlikely here. Like it isn't very straightforward that you can use binary search here. If you get the idea binary search can be used, I don't think it's a very difficult problem. So are there any queries regarding what's the problem or what's the solution? Okay, I guess some chat is going on in the chat, but okay. Okay, I hope this problem is clear to everyone. So, okay, so let's go on to the next. Okay, are there any queries? You can just unmute yourself and ask. And maybe if you get some queries for the previous problem as well, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask, and like we will discuss it up. So let's go ahead. So let's go to the next problem, which is MEX and increments. And so again, this is like what's the problem given is you're given an array of n non-negative integers, and and what you can do is in one operation you can select the index j and increment its value by 1. So you can select j and increment aj by 1. That would be your one operation. Maybe like you can say that it would cost you 1 rupees, and he can choose the same j multiple times, but you can increment it just by 1 every time. For each I from 0 to n, you want to make max of the array equal to I. So what max is? The max of the array is equal to the minimum non-negative integer that is not in the array. I hope that idea is clear to you what max is. So yeah, let's go on to what the solution would be. So for each I, we want to figure out like how many operations you would have to do so that the max of the array is I. So let's start with 0. If you want the mx of the array 0, I guess it's always possible. And what you just need to ensure is there is no 0 in the array. So what you do is you just count the number, like the frequency of all the elements in the array. And now for 0, the answer is frequency of 0, because you must remove all the elements which are 0. Otherwise, like the mx would not be 0. So to get the max 0, you just print frequency of 0. Like you just do frequency of 0 operations that would ensure that the max of the array is 0. So to get the max 0, the answer is frequency of 0. Let's see in general. So yeah, in general, if you want to get so suppose you want the max of your array to be I, then what you must ensure is there is at least one element from 0 to n minus 1. So in your final array, there should be at least one element which is 0, one element which is 1, one element which is 2, and so on up till I minus 1. So there should be at least one element for each of them, and I is not there in the array. So that is after it, there could be elements, there could not be elements, it's completely fine. We just want to ensure that there are elements from 0 to I minus 1 and I is not there. So you can simply divide it into two steps. What is the cost in which you can ensure that every element from 0 to I minus 1 is there? And now to ensure that there are no numbers on I, you will just add frequency of I. Like for all the elements which have the frequency I, you will just move them to the like next step, which is like I plus 1. So your cost would be this cost plus the frequency of I. So now the task reduces to find what is the minimum number of operation you must do to ensure that you have at least these elements. So let's start it like with a example. So let's take up this. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I guess this is maybe simple. So let me take one example: 0, 1, 3, 4, and maybe 1 is there twice. So this is your array 0, 1, 1, 3, 4. You can see that for 0, the answer is 1, like because you will just move 0 to the next. For 1, the answer is 2, because you would simply move like these both 1 to 2, because you don't want them to be 1. So frequency of 1 is 2, so the answer is 2. For 2, you can already see there is at least one element from 0 to I minus 1, and there is no 2. So the answer is 0 for 2. For 3, you know that you must move 3, so that would cost you one operation. And now you must ensure that there is at least one element for all the previous thing. So you know the cost for 1. So you know the cost for 1 is 0, which is that like the cost to ensure that there are all elements from 0 to 1, which is 0. Now you have to ensure that 2 is also there. So to have 2, what you do is you find the nearest element, which is like an extra, like you already have a duplicate of that kind of thing, and you would put it to here. Suppose there were two zeros as well, so instead of taking 0, you would prefer to take 1, because that would take you less cost. So for this problem, what the solution would be, like for this particular test case, you take this 0 and like you take this 1 and increment it to 2. So now your cost would be 1 to make this to 2 and ensure that there are all the elements, and 1 to change it from 3 to 4. So your total cost is 2. And similarly for 4, to ensure that everyone from 0, 1, 2, 3 is there, you would have to spend 1 to make this thing to 2, and then you would have to shift 4, which makes again a cost of 1. So your answer would be 2 again for 4, for I equal to 4, and for I equal to 5, your cost would be 1, because you don't have to shift something or anything. So this is like what the solution would look like. So how you exactly do is, I will just show up the code. Yeah, so this is my code for the problem. I guess it's like a small code in general for a problem. So you take up all the elements, you sort them, like which is maybe not very necessary. I have used map. You can use an array as well. Again, a map is simply an array if you use in like the intent format. So for each element from 1 to I just increment its frequency by 1. So map is initialized to 0 initially, and you increment its frequency by 1. So basically map of x is the number of time x occurs in the array A. Then you go on to iterate over all the elements from like all the numbers from 1 to n. You define the cost as 0 initially, and now cost of I is cost of I minus 1, because you must ensure that everything from 1 to I minus 1 is there, like 1 to I minus 1 is there. And now you define x to be like the frequency of the current element, which is basically I minus 1. So basically here cost of I is uh, so cost of I is minimum number of operations required to ensure 0 to I minus 1 is there. Uh, 0 to I minus 1 is there. That thing would be cost of I. And cost of I minus 1 is no, minimum number of operations required to ensure 0 to I minus 2. So to ensure like to get the minimum cost for I, what we do is we take up the cost for I minus 1, because that is something you would have to do. Then you check the frequency of I minus 1. So you have taken all the elements from 0 to I minus 2, and then you check the frequency of I minus 1. So how many times does I minus 1 occurs in our array? And you suppose x is that value. If x is not equal to 0, so you already have like some positive number of times, like I minus 1 is already there in the array. You decrement x by 1 and you push it in the priority queue. I would explain you what that priority queue thing is, but the important thing is the cost of I would just be cost of I minus 1, because you would do cost of I minus 1, and now you would just take like the I minus 1 element. So in just cost of I minus 1, you can ensure everything from 0 to I minus 1 is there. So that's the cost of I. And in the end, you can just see that we are printing cost of I plus map of I, which is basically cost of I is the minimum number of operation to ensure 0 to I minus 1, and then map of I is the frequency of the ith number. So that thing would be the answer to I. And yeah, so we do this thing, and suppose suppose for a particular position we don't have I minus 1. So just in this case, for 3, so to get the max 3, we need to ensure 0, 1 and 2 are there, but 2 is not here, like 2 is not present. So you must take some previous element and make it to 2. So for all the extra elements, we have pushed them into a priority queue, PQ. So priority queue is something in which you can push your values and you would get the maximum value out every time. So what you do is, if your priority queue is empty, which means there is no extra element, then you know that you cannot get MEX to be I, and for all the future values, you can't get the MEX. It's something which you can maybe write down and figure out. So you can't get an MEX to be that value, and thus for all the future values, your answer would be -1, which is what we have done here. If there are some extra, like if there are some extra elements, you just take that value, like you pop it out from your priority queue because you've already used it, and to your cost you would add I minus 1 minus y. So you have to make it I minus 1. It was y previously, so to make y to I minus 1, you would have to do I minus 1 minus y operations. So like here, to make 1 to 2, you would have to do one operation. If you had to make 0 to 2, it would take a cost of 2. So that is the cost of I, and in the end you can just print cost of I plus frequency of I. And for the numbers you can't do, you just print -1, because that is what has been asked you to do. So does anyone have any queries, or like, I hope you got the solution. So again, there are two costs. One is to ensure they're like 0 to I minus 1 is present, and one is to ensure that there are no I present. So that way you can get MEX to be I. Are there any queries for this problem? You can maybe raise your hand or unmute yourself. Okay. If you have any queries, like please feel to unmute yourself or anything. Maybe you can write in chat as well. Basically, I hope the idea is clear to everyone. You can maybe try to do the implementation yourself a bit differently. The core idea is you ensure everything from 0 to I minus 1 is there and no I is present. So to ensure no I is there, you just add frequency of I. That part is simple. Important thing is how do you ensure there is everything from 0 to I minus 1, the minimum number of operations. So for that, you simply take cost of I minus 1 and then you add the minimum cost to make an extra element as I. I hope that idea is clear. Okay. So if you have some important question, you can unmute yourself and ask. Okay. So I would actually request you to actually implement it out after you go, so that you get a better idea of the problem. Maybe now while listening, you may think that, okay, you got the solution, but when you actually try to implement it, it may you may find some other difficulties and all. So do try to implement the problem if you think that, okay, you got the idea, or like you know how you would do it. That thing is very important, obviously. Okay, so let's go on to the next problem. Again, we have discussed A to E problem so far. If you feel any kind of difficulty in any of the problem, you can either write it in chat or you can unmute yourself and ask. Even when we're discussing some other problem, so please feel free to do that. Okay, so let's go on to the next problem. F was like one of the easiest problem. So F was like one of the easiest problem of this contest. I'm not very sure why there are so less submissions for F, but like F was pretty easy and straightforward. Maybe like you may get the intuitive idea. Maybe to prove it, it might take you some time. But if you get the intuitive idea, you can simply implement it and get it done. So F was like pretty easy, though it is like an F problem. To be honest, I found it to be easier than D and D. I'm not sure why it's F and why it has less submissions. We will just discuss you the approach and tell you the implementation. Maybe you can think that, maybe you can give a thought on if it's true or not. So I will just explain the problem for someone who has not read the problem. So you're given three numbers n, m, and k. Now what you are said is, so you have to maybe I'll draw it up. Okay, let's take some example. Let's take 522. So given n, m, and k. N is the number of tables you have. N is the number of friends you have. And k is the number of rounds. So tables, so suppose you have two tables, table 1 and table 2, and you have 5 friends. So what you have to do is, you have to distribute these friends onto the two tables. So like friends are numbered from 1 to 5. So there are like multiple ways to do that things. One thing is to do 1 to 5 here and no one here. You can do 1 to 4 here and 5 here. You can do 1 to 1, 2 and 4 here, and then 3 and 5 here. You can do it in almost any way. That's not a condition. So like you can do this kind of distribution, and they would play a game among themselves on that particular table, which is not the point here. So the main thing is, you divide these 5 people among these two tables, and one thing you have to ensure is that on each table either there are 5 by 2 floor people or 5 by 2 seal people. So since we are moving towards the like moving further towards the harder problems, I would expect you know basic things like seal and floor, and that's something we will discuss. So probably with as we move on to the problems, I would just try to reduce the explanation into the basic things. So yeah, for 5, so basically for 5 and 2, you can get each table must have either 2 or 3. So suppose like this is your n, this is m, and this is k. So suppose n was a multiple of m, then each table would get equal number of people. And suppose for this case, so basically what you can do is, suppose n is equals to m into say some number l plus r. So what you can know is, for each of the m tables 1 to m, all of them would get l, and exactly r tables, like r is between 0 to m, so it is like the remainder kind of thing. R can be 0, but it is less than m. So for r tables, maybe like the top r tables, they would get one more person. So now we have ensured that every table has either L plus 1 or L. L is basically n by m floor. So this is what is given. Each table must have either n by m floor or n by m seal number of people. So n is m into L plus r. And yeah, so basically R tables would exactly get seal of n by m, and n minus m minus r would get floor of n by m. Maybe I just said it incorrectly. So yeah, R tables would get seal and remaining tables would get floor. Seal is one more than the floor thing if it's not divisible. So that's the basic thing. And what they have said is, so k is the number of rounds. You would play the game, which is like the division thing. You would do this division k times, and what you have to ensure is, after like you have made them play the game. So basically, for each time a player plays in the R scenario, let's say this is seal and this is floor. So each time a player plays in the seal scenario, he gets plus 1 point. And when he plays on the floor scenario, he gets 0 points. So for seal, you get plus 1. For floor, you don't get any point. Yeah, so this is like the basic thing. Now what you have to ensure is, after k games have been played, you calculate the score of each of the player. And now for any two player, their score should not differ by more than 1. So this is what is mentioned here as well. Yeah, the game is okay. Yeah, player wants the game to be fair, so every time they get nm by m, they get 1 point, and after all the scores have been calculated, bi minus bj should be less than or equal to 1. So for two players, either this score is the score is same or they differ by just 1. So that's the idea of the problem. You have to print how you would exactly divide up the like players in every round so as to get the answer. So we have to just print that up. So I guess that part is easy. So yeah. So basically, one observation which strike to me first, if for any k we can do, then for each round I will just keep on constructing it in such that if I stop at this point, then also the condition that pi minus pj is greater than or equal to 1 is true. Even after this round, the condition is true. Even after k minus 1 round, the condition is true. And after kth round as well, the condition is true. So after each round, that condition should be ensured. So because it can be done for each case, so I will just go on doing up it in that order. And yeah. So now what do you do is, suppose maybe I should not do that. Yeah. So suppose initially we can do any division. Let's take up the 5 2 2 thing. Initially we can do any division. So I would do like 5 to 1 2 3 and 4 5. So in this case 1 2 3 got 1 1 1 point, while 4 and 5 got 0 point. Now in next round I must again do the division. I would always put 3 in the first player in the first table and 2 in the second table. Now again I must divide them up such that the difference is again not greater than 1. Here as well you can see the difference is equal to 1 if you take one player from here and one player from here, and 0 if you take from the same table. Now I must again do the division and ensure that like the difference is not greater than 2, like greater than 1. So as you can see, there are 3 people here and 2 people here. Naturally, it feels like you would give them, like you would try to give them equal chance. So let's try to put maximum number of players from the second table here so that they can also get plus 1 point. So like for table 1, you would get plus 1. For table 2, you won't get any point. And yeah, so just with the intuition, you would try to ensure that all those who got suffered initially, let them gain plus 1 in this turn. So we shift them here. So 4 and 5 would come here. Since we want to put 3 people, one person from them would also remain. So let it be 1. And 2, 3 would now come on the bottom. So after this turn, 4 and 5 have score 1. 1 has a score of 2. 2 and 3 have a score of 1. So you can again see that the difference is not greater than 1. So this is what happened for 2 rounds. This is the answer. This is a valid answer for k equal to 2. Let's try to do it for k equal to 3 as well. So now we want to do it for k equal to 3. And again, we try to ensure that those who suffered previously get here. So we put 2 and 3 here. Again, we have to put another person. So let's keep it 4. And 5 and 1 makes it to the bottom. So after this round, 2, 3 and 4 would have a score of 2. And 5 and 1 would have a score of 1 and 2 respectively. So after this one as well, you can see that the maximum difference between any two players is 1. Suppose there is 4th round as well. And so you can do the same thing. Those who suffered previously gets up. So I put 1, 5 and 2 here. And I hope I'm doing it correctly. And 3, 4 make it up here. So after this round, what's the case is? 1 has 3 points. 5 has 2 points. Yeah, 2 has, okay, so I just wrote it in. It will be 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just trying to follow the cyclic thing if you can observe. So 3 and 4 make it up here. 5 has 2 points and they have 3, 3 and 2, 2 again. And the next round again, 3 and 4 comes up. So you can see what's the pattern being followed. So I will just try to show you what we do in general. Okay, suppose there are, these are the M tables. So suppose there are L plus 1 people on the first table. Let me just, Okay. These are 1, 2, 3 up to n. So these are the people. But this thing particularly represents that they belong to the same table. So I have m tables. Yeah. So suppose the first two tables have L plus 1. These have L plus 1 people, and these two tables have L. Now what you do is, this is like what you would do for the first round. In the next round, you would just give these person the L plus 1 table. They'll just use plus 1. For this, you would do plus 1 table. And for this, you would give the 0 table. So I hope you get what it means. Okay. So in fact, like it's not possible to exactly do that up, because like you would miss out on some people. We will just try to take up a case and show you what would be done. Suppose we have 10 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and m is 4. So 10 is 4 into 2 plus 2. So two groups two groups will get three, like a table with 3% thing, and two groups will get a table of 2% thing. So these both groups get plus 1, and these get 0. So this is for the first round. For the second round, what you would do is try to ensure that people who suffered lastly get the benefit this time. So you start from here. You give these three people the plus 1 thing. You give this and this the plus 1 thing, and you give the remaining the 0 thing. And you can try to see it up. It would work here as well. Nextly, when you do up for another round, you start it from the person that last, like that was given the disadvantage last time. So 3 had the 0 table thing. So 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8 gets the 3% table, and 9 and 10 gets the 2% table. I'm not sure if you're getting it completely, but I hope you get the intuitive idea to divide up the table, and then for people who suffered in the last round, you give them the advantageous thing this time, and you keep on doing that in the cyclic thing. Like the proof, if you try to do that, you can do that up. It's not a really big thing, but it will just take up some time. So I would just keep it up for here. I hope you get the intuition. So you initially you would divide L plus 1, L plus 1, and L. And from next time, what you would do is you just start from the person whom you gave the L table. So maybe I'll just draw it. So you give L plus 1, L plus 1, and then you give L. So L plus 1 would be R times, and L would be the remaining number of times. For these people, you gave advantage. Then you would give advantage to people starting from here, then from here, and this thing goes on cyclically. I will just show you my code. Okay, so this is the code. You have nmk. You take in the input nm and k values. L is n by m, which is like the thing which each of them would get, and e is the remainder. So n percentage m. So e is the extra thing. So basically, e tables would get one more player. So that's that part. Last is the number, like the person who got the benefit last. So last plus 1 should get the benefit this time. So while k minus 1 for each round, what you do is you initialize the counter by last. So basically count is the counter of people, because we need to do in cyclically. Now what you do is starting from count, for E rounds, you print L plus 1 tables, and like you just print count plus 1. So each time you print count plus 1, count plus 2, and so on. So you keep on incrementing count and printing it. If it gets greater than n, you can subtract n. I hope you all know that. So for first E tables, you print L plus 1 and L plus 1 people. And for the remaining people, you just print out them as it is. Okay, just a second. Yeah. So I hope you get that thing. So and like now you can see that last is changed to count just after we have done this. Just after this thing is be done, count is the index of the person who got the benefit, like the last person who got the benefit. So from the next time, for the next round, we would start from the person after him. So that thing is ensured in this way. So again, it's a bit intuitive idea, but you can easily prove it up, and this is kind of like a greedy technique because you must start from that person, otherwise you would mess up things. So just try to follow the cyclic thing, and you try to give out the benefit like to the persons in the cyclic order as well. So I'm not sure if the idea is pretty clear to all of you, but I hope you got the intuitive idea. Do you guys have any queries or something? Like in the solution or the implementation at least? Okay. Okay, so probably I will just go on, like give a brief idea about the G problem. So G as well is like something I found like a bit straightforward problem. So it was not too complicated or something. So you're given some points which are like mines. So on a graph, you are given some points which are like called the mines. Uh, if any two mines they differ vertically or horizontally by a difference of less than k, you would connect them. So let's suppose these are all the mines that are connected. Like these are all the distances less than k. So if any two mines have a vertical or a horizontal distance of less than k, they are connected. And if they don't have, then they are like kind of separate. So these are the mines. You are given the time after which each of the mine will get explode. And apart from it, you can also select a particular mine and click on it to explode him. I hope you all know the problem. So what we do is for each connected. So like we'll just try to find yeah, like once one mine explodes, all the mines connected to it will also explode, and your task is to explode all the mines. So what you do it for you find out all the connected components. If you have to click a mine, then you would not click two mines from the same connected component. That is obvious. You won't do that. So if you have to click, you will click only one mines, or you would find out the mine which would explode in the minimum number of times. So in the connected component, suppose this is the mine which has the minimum time to explode itself, then you would just wait for this amount of time, after which all of the mines will get exploded. So what you can do is you can simply convert it to an equivalent problem of there are uh, say 5 mines for this problem. These are all independent mines, and this particular mine would explode by say after t1 time. This would explode after t2 times, t3 times. So the idea is if you have to broke up a connected component of mines, you would only click on one mines because that will automatically blow all the mines, or it would get blown up automatically after t1 time, where t1 is minimum of all of these. So this I guess a simple thing. So for each connected component, you just find out the minimum time t2, t3, t4, and t5. These are like the minimum time it would take for this connected component to get explode automatically. So just when one of the mines blew up, it would blow all the other mines as well. And yeah, so these are all the mines. Now these mines are all independent. For this particular mine, you must either wait for t1 amount of time, or you must click it before t1. So if you want to break, if you want to explode it, so what you do is maybe I'll just show you up my code. So you define a map to like map a coordinate to node, cause like the numbers can exceed 10 power 9 and minus 10 power 9. So initially I have just incremented a counter and mapped each of the nodes to a particular point in Mandi. So starting counter from 0 and incrementing it 1 by every time. So node of x comma y is changed to counter plus plus, and that is done. So each point is basically given a node, given a number. So in the diagram, you can say this node is given number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on. You gave a number to each of the node. After that, you have saved the time information as well, how much time it will blow, after how much time it will explode. Then you create, you define what all pairs are adjacent. So you can see that this mine, if it explodes, it will break up, like it will explode all the other mines as well. So you can make it connected to all of them, but what is sufficient is you just make it connected to the nearest mine to it if it's less than k, and then if other mines will be blown, then it can be blown by this itself. So you just create a adjacency to the 4 nearest mine if the distance is less than x. And for that, what I've done is I have stored them in a set, like in a map. Basically for each coordinate I have stored, for xrs, all the y coordinate in that particular x, and yrs all the x coordinates with that particular y. So that's more about the implementation side, which you can see and get. Using that, I have created the adjacency list. Like if the difference is greater than k, you can't do anything else. You just make both the nodes adjacent, like make them connected, and after which you just do a simple DFS to get the connected thing. Basically, the connected component thing is like what the most difficult part of the problem was. Once you get the time and all for particular problem, you have this 5 mines which would explode on the individual times of ti, or you can click them to explode. So for that thing, you would just simply sort them and iterate over them from 1 to n to check if you wait till this time, then how much time will it take. So you start from 0 to m. Temp is if you wait till that mine to explode, how much time will it take. So value of is the value of time, like the time you would have to wait till that mine explode, and m minus I minus 2 is the minimum number of clicks additionally you would have to do for the remaining mines. So you would take maximum of that, you would have to make them at that time, and you minimize your answer with that, and in the end you print up the answer. So that thing is pretty simple. I guess this was more about implementation. You find up the connected components and then you iterate over them to print. Do you guys have any queries in this particular problem, either the explanation or the solution, like, or the implementation? I guess this was also a bit simple for a G problem. Like it was just on the implementation side. You just have to find the connected components and you just like find the minimum of it and sort them out. After which you can just iterate over them and see if you wait till this time, what happens, and so on. So if you do the connected thing, the remaining problem is like a like B or C level problem in Div 3. So I'm not very sure why this was on G and why it's kept like why there are so less solves as well. I guess probably because of the implementation thing. So I guess that is it for today. We won't discuss that problem because even I haven't solved. I have an idea, but like the implementation is left for me. So we won't discuss H. Do you guys have any queries from all the problems between A to G? Okay. Okay, I guess if there are no more queries, then we'll probably end the session. If you have some query, you can stay up later on and ask it, or like you can leave. So thank you.